Today, we explore the lives of two individuals whose stories, though vastly different, reveal the depth and complexity of human experience. Diane Keaton, the actress whose charm, wit, and fearless individuality reshaped Hollywood, turning ordinary narratives into cultural milestones and creating characters that became symbols of independence, strength, and authenticity. And Fred Singleton, a man whose 42-year ordeal on death row challenged the very notions of justice, punishment, and humanity in America, highlighting the paradoxes of a system that condemned him yet could not legally execute him. One lived in front of the camera, captivating audiences with her talent and charisma. The other endured decades trapped in legal limbo, a life suspended between death and mercy. Together, their stories remind us of the fragility of life, the power of storytelling, and the enduring complexity of human morality. She was a face you thought you already knew, and then she would do something, tilt a hat, mumble a confession, pull at the corner of a cigarette, and the whole room would shift to look at her differently. Diane Keaton moved through film like someone who had quietly rewritten a language of charm. She could be awkward and magnetic at once, guarded and disarmingly honest, the friend who tells you the truth and somehow makes you love her for it. Today we look back at the life and work of a woman whose artistry, style, and stubborn individuality left an imprint on cinema and culture. She was born Diane Hall on January 5, 1946, in Los Angeles, the eldest of 4 children in a household that prized imagination even if it lived far from Hollywood's glitter. Her mother, Dorothy, was a homemaker and an amateur photographer. Her father, John Newton Ignatius Jack Hall, worked in real estate and engineering. It was her mother's theatricality, the pageants, the little domestic performances, that first taught Diane the power of being seen. She adopted her mother's maiden name, Keaton, when she joined the Actors Union because another Diane Hall was already registered. In that small decision she began a public life that would always be partly a reclamation of identity. As a young woman, she left the California suburbs for New York with a suitcase and a conviction that performance mattered. She studied the Meisner technique at the neighborhood playhouse, learned to listen, to react, to make entire scenes feel like honest conversations. Her stage debut in the original Broadway production of Hair put her in the era's electric, restless theatrical world. It taught her to take risks, to be alive in the moment. Those early years, waitressing between jobs, sharing cramped apartments, testing an ego against rejection, shaped a humility that would become part of her on-screen persona, a kind of unassuming bravery. Her first major screen breakthrough came in a film that would become mythic, Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather. As Kay Adams, the woman who loves Michael Corleone and then discovers the monstrous architecture of his life, Keaton brought a quiet, human center to a story about power and corruption. She never needed gilded speeches. She communicated by the smallest shifts in expression, a glance that widened the frame. The Godfather made her visible to millions, but it was the collaboration with a very different auteur that would define her career and change cinema in its wake. Her partnership with Woody Allen began in the theater and carried into film. It was at once creative, intimate, and complex. Annie Hall, released in 1977, is the moment when Diane Keaton and film history intersected in a way that few actors ever achieve. The character of Annie drew on aspects of Keaton herself, her speech rhythms, her nervous honesty, the odd little mannerisms that read as authenticity on screen, and in turn Keaton's performance remade the rules for romantic comedy. She didn't play coquettish glamour or neat certainties. She played a messy, layered woman who was funny and vulnerable, assertive and fragile. For Annie Hall, she won the Academy Award for Best Actress, and the film changed how audiences could imagine love. Not as tidy resolution, but as a complicated, funny, often unresolved negotiation between souls. To make a cinematic portrait of Diane Keaton is to pay attention to contradictions. Her wardrobe, the oversized blazers, the ties, the hats, felt at once masculine and defiantly individualistic. It was an armor and an invitation. She wore her clothes as if they were punctuation marks in an ongoing sentence about self-possession. Her style was not costume. It was a kind of argument that beauty doesn't require conformity. Fashion magazines turned her looks into language, but she always insisted she dressed for herself. That stubborn taste would come to mean that Keaton wasn't simply playing roles, she was modeling a way to age, to live, and to dress that refused to shrink with time. Her range was enormous. After Annie Hall, she moved fluidly between comedy and drama, between intimate indies and major studio vehicles. In Red, she played Louise Bryant with an intensity that earned her another Oscar nomination. In Baby Boom, she negotiated career ambition and sudden motherhood in a way that felt both contemporary and deeply humane. She could be a tragic figure, an unlikely comic heroine, a woman discovering late-in-life tenderness. Films like Marvin's Room, Something's Gotta Give, The First Wives Club, and later Book Club and Morning Glory each showed her adapting to different emotional climates while retaining that essential Keaton quality. A combination of vulnerability, urgent curiosity, and an almost surgical precision in timing. There was also an interior life she cultivated away from the camera, a devotion to photography, to collecting, to restoring old houses. She wrote memoirs and essays that read like a continuing monologue with herself about choices, regret, the small luminous things that form a life. She took the meticulous eye of a photographer into her roles, framing emotions as though arranging objects on a table. She directed features and episodes, curated images, and in interviews she spoke about the craft of noticing the way light falls, the oblique humor in a silence, the way families fail and hold. The public saw her on camera. Those who know her work closely saw the hungry observer who turned attention itself into art. Her personal relationships were often in the tabloids but rarely fully public. Woody Allen, Warren Beatty, Al Pacino, three names that circle her life in different registers of collaboration, affection, and creative tension. She never married, and late in life she embraced motherhood in a form that felt entirely her own. She adopted 2 sons, calling the experience transformative. She spoke about fear and aspiration with a candor that was sometimes startling. The woman who had stood beneath spotlights could be shaky and insecure off-screen, and she let the world see that. That willingness to reveal flaw made her performances ring true. Keaton had the capacity to carry the weight of irony without losing human warmth. To make a video that honors Diane Keaton means to build texture. To move from close-ups of a hat brim to long shots of a crowded stage, from archival interviews where she laughs at herself to quiet film clips where her gaze does the work of a paragraph. Begin with archival footage of her as a young actress on Broadway, a cut to production stills from The Godfather, then a slow dissolve into the city streets of 1970s Manhattan, where Annie Hall's neurotic poetry found its home. Let a narrator not merely recite facts but ask questions. How did she make awkwardness feel like intimacy? Why did audiences trust her with their intimacies? Use layered sound. A single piano motif when we talk about her private life, a lightly percussive rhythm when we describe her comedic timing, the subtle swell of strings as we examine the cultural impact of Annie Hall. Intercut interviews in which collaborators, directors, co-stars, costume designers, offer small non-linear anecdotes. The hat she refused to take off, the way she rehearsed a single line until it surrendered a new meaning, the evening she chose a house to restore because a window reminded her of a childhood photograph. These human details make the portrait live. Narration should favor specificity over platitude. Describe the tiny, transgressive things she did in scenes. The moment in Annie Hall when she insists on a peculiar intimacy and the camera rewards her, the way in The Godfather she reads a domestic catastrophe as though it were a natural phenomenon, the breath held in Marvin's Room when she refuses to leave. Break down performances line by line. Why a pause is funny there, why a cough undercuts a bravado, why the decision to look away in one scene turns the whole performance into a confession. Use actorly analysis that's generous and clear. Explain the Meisner-trained impulse to respond truthfully, and then show how Keaton turned that lesson into an instinct for film, translating live theatrical techniques into cinematic subtlety. Visually, honor texture. Pull in archival photos of her meticulously restored homes, her private snapshots, pages from her sketchbooks. Juxtapose them with clips of her characters' apartments, cluttered, eccentric, human. Let costume be another narrator. A montage of her most iconic outfits, the suit jackets and ties and hats, each cut to a moment when her clothing performed character. Add slow-motion sequences while a voiceover reads excerpts from her own writing, lines about aging, about desire, about the unreliability of memory, and you create a layered intimacy between the artist's life and her art. Don't shy from complexity. The relationship with Woody Allen, complicated, creative, and later politically fraught, merits careful, contextual treatment. Present facts, quote from interviews, let historians or film scholars situate their work within the era's norms and the changing cultural lens. Explain how Keaton's art cannot be reduced to her associations, but also how collaborations shaped certain works. Treat complexity as the terrain of truth rather than an obstacle to simple elegy. Let the script breathe in places. Dedicate long, unhurried paragraphs to single scenes that changed perceptions. The diner talk in Annie Hall that turns from flirtation to existential confession. The quiet meal in The Godfather that makes family feel like a trap. The dinner table eruptions of The First Wives Club where humor becomes social retribution. Use these scenes as case studies in how Keaton's manner, the slight tilt of a head, the evasive laugh, the sudden directness, made audiences lean forward. These are the moments film students will want to study. Treat them with care, pause after each breakdown to let the image speak. Include testimony. Track down interviews where she talks about style and solitude. Splice lines where she says she dresses to please herself with footage of women who were influenced by her look. Invite contemporary actors and directors to speak about her impact on roles written for women over 50. Ask costume designers and fashion historians to map the lineage from her suits to later icons. Let critics reflect on how Annie Hall shifted rom-com grammar. Let sociologists note how Keaton's public life modeled single womanhood outside normative marriage narrative. These voices will turn a biography into a cultural mosaic. Musically, keep it intimate. Acoustic guitar or a simple piano can underline vulnerability. A slow, plaintive string can mark loss without melodrama. When the film touches on the joy in her career, the awards, the laughter at premieres, the standing ovations, lift the tempo slightly. When the script goes inward, strip the sound down to breathing, a match struck, the small ambient noise of a room. Sound design can make her presence tactile. The rustle of a trench coat, the clink of a glass, the whisper of pages turning in one of her photo books. These little sounds become fingerprints. End with legacy rather than finality. Resist the temptation to coronate. Instead, offer an invitation. Suggest that her work continues to speak to the messy business of being human. The way we perform to protect ourselves, the ways we accidentally reveal our tender parts, the stubbornness of someone who refuses to be small. Close on a lasting image. Perhaps a single frame of Keaton laughing on camera, not a pose but an exhalation, and let the narrator offer this. That what she taught audiences was less how to be famous than how to be honestly, gloriously oneself. Cite her life's arc. Born Diane Hall in 1946, a stage actor turned screen star who won an Academy Award for Annie Hall and left a body of work that reshaped comedy and character acting. Her death was reported today, and the world is remembering her with that mixture of grief and gratitude that great artists always evoke. The story of Fred Singleton is a haunting reflection of the contradictions and moral complexities embedded in America's death penalty system. For 42 long years, Singleton lived under the looming shadow of a death sentence, trapped in a paradox where the law both condemned him and protected him. His life came to an end on October 11, 2025, at the age of 81, not by the executioner's hand, but by the quiet inevitability of natural causes, in a prison hospital in South Carolina. Yet, it is precisely the length and nature of his confinement that make his death extraordinary, a human life spent entirely in the tension between death and mercy. Fred Singleton's journey to death row began in 1982, with a crime so horrific that it shocked his community. He broke into the home of 73-year-old widow Elizabeth Lomenick in Newberry County, South Carolina. Court records and evidence detail the unspeakable acts he committed. He raped and then strangled the elderly woman with a bedsheet before stealing her jewelry and car. Fingerprints placed him at the scene, and the stolen property was found in his possession. The evidence was overwhelming. In 1983, the court sentenced Singleton to death, and the machinery of the law prepared to carry out its ultimate judgment. But Singleton's case quickly became far more than a matter of punishment. It entered the murky waters of constitutional law, mental health, and human rights. Throughout the 1980s and into the 1990s, his attorneys fought tirelessly to argue that Singleton's severe mental impairments rendered him incompetent to be executed. They argued that he could not understand the nature or reason for his punishment, and that executing him would violate the Eighth Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment. In 1993, the South Carolina Supreme Court rendered a landmark decision. They acknowledged that Singleton's mental state made him incapable of comprehending that he faced execution. He could barely communicate beyond monosyllabic responses to his attorneys, and the court determined that this profound incapacity meant he could not be put to death. Yet, the ruling created a profound legal paradox. Singleton remained on death row. The court refused to overturn his sentence entirely, leaving it in place in the hope that future developments in psychology might restore his competency. They also clarified that he could not be forcibly medicated solely to make him eligible for execution. What followed was a 3-decade-long limbo, a life suspended between freedom and death. Singleton remained in prison, not as a traditional prisoner, but as a man who could neither be released nor legally executed. The system kept him alive while acknowledging his profound incapacity, a living embodiment of the tensions between justice, punishment, and human right. His case became a symbol of the ethical dilemmas that plague the death penalty. How do we reconcile accountability with humanity? How does a system ensure justice when the law and morality collide? Over the decades, Singleton's situation sparked debates in legal circles, mental health communities, and the public sphere. Critics pointed to the immense financial and moral cost of maintaining someone on death row for decades, while proponents emphasized the constitutional protections that safeguarded the rights of even the most heinous offenders. His existence in legal limbo became a mirror reflecting the deep contradictions of the justice system itself. When Fred Singleton finally died of natural causes, it was not with fanfare, but with the quiet inevitability of time. No gavel fell, no executioner struck. Yet, the conclusion of his life closed one of the most legally complex and morally charged chapters in American capital punishment history. His death leaves behind a legacy of questions rather than answers. What is justice? Can punishment exist without human understanding? And where do the boundaries of law meet the limits of compassion? Fred Singleton's story endures not because of his crime, nor because of his sentence, but because it illuminates the frailty and humanity of the system itself. For 42 years, he lived in a world defined by legal contradictions, where death was both inevitable and impossible. And in the end, time, not law, determined the outcome, a poignant reminder that the passage of years can render even the most absolute judgments uncertain, leaving us to grapple with the meaning of justice long after the verdict has been written. Diane Keaton and Fred Singleton each left an indelible mark on the world, in profoundly different ways. Diane taught us to embrace life, individuality, and the courage to be ourselves. Fred Singleton's life and prolonged incarceration forced a nation to confront the limits of justice and the moral dilemmas of capital punishment. Through film and through lived experience, they compel us to reflect on what it means to be human. Their legacies endure in the stories they told, the lives they touched, and the lessons they left behind, reminding us that life, in all its complexity, is worth remembering, honoring, and understanding.